Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, Davis. This is Jim Morose, and this is A Republic Always. Today, as we're taping this show, it's October 22nd, 2025. Or as they would say, in the year of our Lord, 2025. Time was always based on the birth and death of Jesus Christ. That's the BC AD line in the sand there. So just a little historical point. Like our Constitution is not only is it a historical document, it is the most present and infamous document because it's survived many other documents to try to run a government. And again, it's very important as when Ben Franklin was leaving the Constitutional Convention, the original one when they created the original Constitution, the citizen said, "What have you wrought? What kind of government did you give us?" And Benjamin Franklin said, "It's a republic if you can keep it." Okay, so I've been contending this for years, is that you can't keep it if you don't know what it is. And unfortunately, everybody keeps calling us a democracy, but we are not a democracy. Through all these episodes of the Republic Today, up to this point, we've been talking about how our Constitution clearly created a republic, a constitutional republic, a representative constitutional republic. We have a democratic form of voting, but that's superfluous. If you listen to the real definitions and the real reality of the difference between a democracy and a republic. But it's very, very important that we understand what we have for a document. Now, so like I said, we've gone through this. So in episode 1, I'll just read it. We did several shows on this, and the first one was why we need a republic and a constitution. The second one was who wrote the Miracle Constitution in Philadelphia, and we talked about that in detail. And then we went into the limited powers of Congress as defined in the Constitution, the limited powers of the executive branch in the Constitution. And then we talked about the Supreme Court, the do's and don'ts, can and can'ts. The legislative branch was supposed to be the weakest. Now it's the strongest because of what has transpired over time. It's a slow creep of democracy overtaking the republic, and that's when we'll lose our freedoms. And then number 6, the 6th session was the real reason for the Bill of Rights. And the real reason for the Bill of Rights was that you can't list out every right, but they did say these are the ones, these 10 are the ones that the government cannot touch. As it says, the Congress shall make no law, and is the first one, shall make no law against free speech. And Congress shall not infringe. They can't infringe on the right to keep and bear arms, okay? So there's no question about that, but in today's narrative, in today's democracy, he with the most votes wins, and they're crushing our republic with unconstitutional laws, with unconstitutional votes, and that's how a democracy works. Doesn't matter if your cause is just or unjust, correct or incorrect, constitutional or unconstitutional, as long as you have 50% plus one vote, you win. As the basic descriptive analogy of a democracy is mob rule. Okay, so basically, if there's 10 people and 7 of them are wolves and 3 of them are sheep, and they're voting on what's for lunch today, well, the 7 wolves go, "Hey, let's have sheep." I like sheep. There you go. That's how it works. And again, democracy and mob rule is what happened in the South. Lynch mobs. That's a lynch mob. That what happened all around. That's a democracy at its finest, at the highest point. And so, if you want to keep screaming for democracy, when you get it, it ain't going to be pretty. That's why we need to learn, know, and love our Constitution. And so I just went over all the ones that we've talked about in the first 6 segments. So today we're going to be talking about Section 7, a nation of states. And we're going to be talking about Section 8, which is the Civil Rights Amendment. So we need to understand that, again, the Constitution was to put an umbrella over the 13 original colonies as a union of states, a union of states together to make the United States. And then and each state, the Constitution declared inside of that, each state, before they can join the Union, they have to have their own Constitution declaring their state is a republic, not a democracy, that it is a republic with a constitution, a constitutional republic. Every state in this union, all 50 states, have a constitution and are run as a republic, and our representatives are missing the mark. When we've tried time and time again to have laws written and have the sight of the Constitution that allows this bill to be constitutional, they voted it down because half the stuff they do, if not all of it, is unconstitutional. Doesn't even come close to constitutional muster. Not even close. So let's cue up the first video, and so we're going to go right into a nation of states and try to remember, this was all new in the beginning, so we can look back and say, oh yeah, we take that all for granted. But in the beginning, it was very, very difficult. In fact, like we learned last time, that's why we had the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, otherwise known as the Bill of Rights, because the states wouldn't sign it unless the federal government agreed to not infringe on our gun rights and shall make no law about religion, free speech, and the people to peacefully assemble for their grievances. And so that's why we have all these, that's why we need to learn and understand how this is all supposed to work. Our representatives are leading us astray, and it's a shame that we keep voting for these people. It's like a coronation in this state that, we need to rotate our representatives so we can have some fresh ideas and really progress. They call themselves progressives, but they're devolving into a democracy. So without further ado, let's fire it up. The states.
The first half of the Constitution, Articles 1, 2, and 3, discuss the powers of the 3 branches of the national government. The second half of the Constitution, Articles 4 through 7, discuss the relationship between the national government and the states. These 4 articles don't get the attention of the first 3, but that doesn't mean they're any less important. Let's take a closer look. First, Article 4. When America won the Revolutionary War, the former English colonies became free and independent states, almost as if they were separate countries. But when those states later voted to ratify the federal Constitution, they became part of an indestructible union of states under a common national government, one in which all citizens were granted the same rights. This seems obvious to us now, but it was new then. As Article 4 affirms, the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. This gets complicated, as everything did at the time, when the issue of slavery is raised. Section 2 of Article 4 declares that no person held to labor in one state, escaping into another, shall be discharged from such labor, but shall be delivered up to the party to whom such labor may be due. This is called the Fugitive Slave Clause, though the term slave is not used. In fact, you can't find the word slave anywhere in the original Constitution. The framers were wary about endorsing slavery, even though for political purposes, to keep the southern states in the Union, they permitted it. As James Madison explained, it would be wrong to admit in the Constitution the idea that there could be property in men. Article 5 explains how the Constitution can be amended. Changing a federal law is simple. It just takes a majority vote in Congress. This happens all the time. Changing the Constitution, however, is much more difficult. It takes a two-thirds majority vote in both the House and the Senate, or a special convention called for by two-thirds of the states. The proposed amendment must then be ratified by three-quarters of the states. This deliberately difficult two-stage process ensures that only those amendments with widespread support get to become part of the Constitution. Article 6 ensures that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. In other words, every state must obey the Constitution and the laws of the federal government. Before the Constitution was ratified in 1788, the new nation was organized under what were called the Articles of Confederation. But this governing document proved woefully inadequate. It had no chief executive, no federal court system, and no ability to collect taxes to support the national defense. The new Constitution addressed all these problems, but it did so in a way that preserved the power of the states to control matters of local concern. And this division of power between the national government and the states is called federalism. Prior to the adoption of the American Constitution, nothing like it had existed in the history of the world. No nation had ever attempted to place these kinds of limits on a central government. For this new federalist system to work, however, states had to agree to be bound by the new Constitution and federal law. Of course, federalism is a two-way street. Federal officials also had to accept the fact that their powers were limited, and that the people in the states retained all powers and rights not constitutionally delegated to the federal government. That's why Article 6 requires every official in the national government and in the states to take an oath to support this Constitution. The Constitution these officials swear to uphold is a federal constitution of limited and divided power. The article closes with another idea we take for granted now, but was ahead of its time then, that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office under the United States. Finally, Article 7 explains the process by which a document drafted in Philadelphia became the Constitution of the United States. The Philadelphia framers had no authority to make the Constitution the law of the land. That decision was left to the people in the several states, not an elite group, not a monarch, but free citizens, the farmer, the shopkeeper, the blacksmith. According to Article 7, the Constitution would not go into effect unless it was ratified by 9 of the original 13 states. On June 21, 1788, New Hampshire became the 9th state to ratify the Constitution. That date marks the moment that the people of the several states transformed themselves into the people of the United States of America. I'm Kurt Lash, professor of law at the University of Richmond for Prager University.
Okay, welcome back. Again, you have to look back and see all the details that really happened. And today, between the media and what people are taught in colleges and high schools about the Constitution being out of date and it's an ancient document, doesn't affect, it's not carrying on today. It's very important to understand that the framers really knew what was going on. And you heard him talk about the fact that, let's just put up picture 3, that the term slave was never used in the Constitution because they knew it was wrong when we came across the Declaration of Independence as the foundation of the foundation. The Declaration of Independence is the foundation of the Constitution. All the morals and principles and everything that are defined in the Declaration of Independence are supporting what's in the Constitution. And so the beginning of the Declaration of Independence comes right out and says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So see, that set the stage for the citizens to elect their leaders and not having a monarch or a king or any of this other stuff. And as you can see, the debate going on today, like I said, today is October 22nd, 2025. And apparently on Saturday, October 18th, 2025, they had no king's protests. Donald Trump was duly elected as president of this country. He is the president, and people that are protesting, saying that he's the king, I guess what they used to call us, election deniers. They're denying the election of President Trump. He is the president. He is not the king. He's not violating the Constitution. He would be arrested and in jail if he was. He's protecting our freedoms. He's not like what happened during COVID. That was an abomination under the Democratic rule. And what these people did during the COVID to shut people down, they arrested people for being out in the street alone. It was, you talk about being a king and a dictator and stealing rights, look no further than what happened during COVID. And if you're still just sticking with the normal news, you're not going to understand that they violated every constitutional nugget known to mankind. They were acting as tyrants. They lied, they cheated, and they stole. And people will pay the price, but you can't just listen to the mainstream media and social media, because the social contagion is going away from our constitutional republic and is driving everyone towards a mob rule democracy. And that's what the summer of love, the summer of 2020, all those riots, they burned down half the big cities in this country, and people were murdered, killed, buildings were looted, billions of dollars of damage, billions of dollars in looting and arson, and just the violence was unconscionable violence, and it's still going on today in the cities, and people aren't addressing the violence and the crime. But again, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and we need to we got to keep that in focus. Okay, just quick picture 4. Just to keep in frame, we got to remember how all this stuff falls together. So it's, the federal government created the Constitution as the law of the land, and the states must obey it, but it is we the people who created this and support the people that we are voting in to represent us. And if they don't represent us, we have to vote them out. And that's all I can say about that. So our second video, we'll cue that up real quick, is Section 8, which is the Civil Rights Amendments. Okay, so there's a whole different, section. Again, what kind of falls in line with, the whole, slaves are not mentioned in the in the Constitution, but these civil rights amendments were very crucial and important before, during, and after the Civil War. So let's just fire that one up. Thank you.
As Americans began the business of reconstructing their country after a bloody civil war, they also reconstructed their Constitution. That was the purpose of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment enhanced the civil rights of all citizens. And the 15th Amendment guaranteed the right to vote, regardless of race. Together, these 3 amendments, known as the Reconstruction Amendments, declared a new birth of freedom in the United States. In January 1863, at the height of the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. That proclamation declared free any person held as a slave in the rebel states. But ending slavery would require much more than a wartime executive order. First, the Union would have to win the war. That wasn't certain in 1863. And second, Lincoln would have to persuade the American people to amend the Constitution to ban slavery forever. In January 1865, with Lincoln's encouragement, Congress passed the 13th Amendment. The amendment proclaimed, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. On April 9th of that year, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Union General Ulysses S. Grant. The Civil War was finally over. Less than a week later, Abraham Lincoln was dead, felled by an assassin's bullet. But his ambition to free the slaves lived on. On December 6, 1865, the American people ratified the 13th Amendment. Slavery could no longer find sanctuary in the Constitution. Although the now former slaves had attained freedom, that didn't mean that they had attained equality. Taking advantage of the chaos following Lincoln's assassination, the Southern states passed the infamous Black Codes, laws and local ordinances which denied blacks basic rights, such as free speech, the right to bear arms, and the right to peaceably assemble. You might well ask, weren't blacks, now that they were free, protected, like every other free American, by the Bill of Rights? No, not according to the Supreme Court. In 1833, the court had ruled in Barron v. Baltimore that the first 10 amendments applied only to the federal government and not to the states. To correct this injustice, a new amendment would be required, and this became the 14th Amendment, ratified on July 9, 1868. No state, it said, shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. In other words, the Bill of Rights now applied to state governments as well as to the federal government. Together, these provisions invalidated the Black Codes and guaranteed the rights of American citizenship to every person in the country, white or black. Yet even this was not enough. Black Americans had fought and died alongside white Union soldiers. Despite their sacrifice, in most states, blacks were still denied the right to vote. To black civil rights leaders like Frederick Douglass, this was unacceptable. According to Douglass, the arm of the federal government is long, but it is far too short to protect the rights of individuals in the interior of distant states. They must have the power of the elective franchise to protect themselves. In February 1869, Congress passed the 15th Amendment to the Constitution. The amendment declared that the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. On February 3, 1870, the new amendment was ratified, and to now President Ulysses S. Grant, erasing the color bar at the ballot box was a measure of grander importance than any one act since the foundation of our free government. Constitutional reconstruction was now complete. Slavery was abolished, the basic rights of life, liberty, and property protected, and political power extended to every citizen in the country regardless of race. The basic structure of the Constitution remained the same, but the rights of American citizens were dramatically expanded. These 3 amendments forever changed the meaning of American freedom. As Frederick Douglass declared upon the adoption of the 15th Amendment, henceforth we live in a new world, breathe a new atmosphere, have a new earth beneath, and a new sky above us. Douglass's enthusiasm was warranted, but sadly premature. There was much more work to be done before Black Americans could enjoy full equality. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, however, made that equality inevitable. I'm Kurt Lash, professor of law at the University of Richmond for Prager University.
Welcome back. Again, it's very important to understand that the Founding Fathers were the total opposite of racists and bigots. They went out of their way to make sure that our Constitution did not support or even mention slavery other than, what they just did to remove slavery from being acceptable in this country. And the only reason they had to is because the bipartisan the country was divided. Today we're what are we? Liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, progressive, whatever, and we need some bipartisan support. But they couldn't get bipartisan support to get rid of slavery, so they made those concessions in the Constitution for the two-thirds of a person. But they never mentioned slavery, and they compromised to admit that it existed, and they let it happen, but they wouldn't enshrine it in law. So anything you hear about the founding fathers being racist and all this crap is a big lie, and that's just the beginning of the lies. We are being lied to about what this country is supposed to be. And again, you can look at it right now. Talk about bipartisan compromise. All these years, they always say the Republicans won't compromise. They won't bipartisan. They won't cross the aisle. Well, today, right now, October 22nd, 2025, the government's been shut down for weeks, and it's the Democrats who won't compromise. They want to spend billions, if not trillions of dollars on illegal aliens so that they can have health care and free room and board and whatever else they want, and they won't budge. So they shut down the government, and that's the Democrats right now, right here. And again, no party is perfect. The Democrats we Republicans have our rhinos, and it's just the whole political scene is pathetic. It's just pathetic, and we all need to have an ollie income free and define, what our representatives should be doing. We used to be able to work together. I was brought up last century, and I lived the best of my lives in last century, where people used to get along, get together, and make decisions for the good of the country. Now we're not. Now we're just doing DEI, special interest groups. Only special interest gets the benefits, and we the people are suffering here because again, the government shut down, and it's just not. There's a whole lot of things that the Constitution should be protecting, but it's not, because we're running this like a democracy and not a republic. In fact, Thomas Jefferson had a great quote, which I will read because this is where we're really gone wrong. Okay? And so Thomas Jefferson said, "On every question of construction of the Constitution, let us carry ourselves back to the time when the Constitution was adopted. Recollect the spirit of the debates, and instead of trying what meaning may be squeezed out of the text or invented against it, conform to the probable one in which it was passed." That's Thomas Jefferson. What that basically means is you got to look at the context. See, and that's where fake news and all this crap that's happening today, and the lies and the misinformation and disinformation are all segments taken out of context. You need to see the context of these things. And it's really funny. How funny is it? Let me just give you an example. When a Democrat makes a mistake, they go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I should have known that. I didn't really mean to say that. This is what I really meant." And it's, okay, that's fine. You're great. But when a conservative makes a blunder, it stays out of context. It is beaten, and it is repeated 10,000 times until everybody believes it, and it's not even true. And that's what's happening today. So wake up and smell the tyranny, folks. You're being lied to. The Constitution is being ignored, and I'm running out of time. I mean, this is only a half an hour show, but we need to spend a lot more time learning how our government should be run and not the way it's being run right now. And voters, you can't make a good decision if you don't have good information. And I can tell you right now, all the information out there is fake, phony, and it's getting worse by the minute with AI. Annoying ignorance. It's AI is artificial intelligence. God have mercy on us all. And that's going to be it for this show. So look at Next month we're going to do the civil rights amendments. No, we just did that. Oh, we're going to do the last two: taxes, voting rights, and prohibitions. And the experiment is a moral challenge. It's a moral challenge. Good night, and read up on your constitutions. See you next month. Thanks. Bye-bye.